To save more on your total food bill, check Acme's newspaper ad this week. It's packed with terrific money-saving specials, plus 4 super-saving coupons. Redeem them and get a pound package of Fireside Bacon for 79 cents. Ideal Grade A medium eggs, 39 cents a dozen. A half-gallon of Farmdale ice cream for 99 cents, and a 3-pound bag of new medium onions for 69 cents. Super-saving coupons. One more way to save at Acme Super Saver.
Josh?
It says they got barbecued ribs at the Rustler.
Rustler presents barbecued ribs, a hearty portion of tasty ribs grilled in a tangy barbecue sauce. All served with baked potato, toasted roll, and a crispy Rustler salad. All for just $4.99. Rustler's new barbecued ribs. Right good eating at a right good price.
Meet the real crew of Love Boat and swim with a lovable Maury eel on Evening Magazine, Friday night at 7:30 on Channel 13.
A message for the President, the Cubans at 11.
Good evening, I'm Hugh Downs, and this is 2020.
On the ABC News Magazine, 2020 tonight. All their lives, they've been honorable citizens, kept clear of the law, and now in their golden years.
You've been charged with shoplifting or retail theft, sir. How do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
We've heard a lot about juvenile delinquents, but tonight, in a sad and troubling story, Geraldo Rivera tells us about some of our parents and grandparents who have become the elderly delinquents. 7 years ago, he was one of the most powerful men in the world, but then he was accused of corruption and forced to resign as Vice President of the United States. Tonight, in an exclusive interview with Barbara Walters, Spiro Agnew insists he was framed and gives his views on honesty in high office.
Honesty is different things to different people.
Now, he's a successful businessman, but is he planning a political comeback? The answer to that question will come tonight in the first television interview about his resignation 7 years ago. Spiro Agnew talks to Barbara Walters. She had 4 children by the time she was 18. She worked as a housekeeper, and her husband was forced to work 2 jobs so they could survive.
When I had my first baby, my second baby, I played with them like they were dolls. I would dress them 4 or 5 times a day, you know, and just played with them. Then I began realizing I wasn't playing house. It was the real thing.
Now she's the real thing. Loretta Lynn, the coal miner's daughter, who earns more than $1 million a year. From a cabin in the hills to the top of the charts, Sylvia Chase profiles the queen of country music, Loretta Lynn.
I looked at Rabbit, Chevette, and Civic. But once I looked at this new Mazda GLC, that's all it took.
Just one look. That's all it took. Yeah, just one look. That's all it took.
I really like Mazda GLC's great standard features and its great mileage. I also like the looks of its nice low price.
Yeah, the more you look, the more you like.
Up front tonight, do we really know, those of us who aren't there yet, what it's like to be old? Can we imagine the loneliness, the terror of watching time pick off our contemporaries and pass us by? Can we feel the desperation of being robbed of our savings and our hopes by the surge of a pitiless economy? Do we understand the pressures that drive some of our elders, after honorable lives, to small and shameful acts of crime? Geraldo Rivera is with us tonight with a report we must see on an aspect of aging in America we might prefer to keep hidden. Geraldo?
Hugh, as we know, one of the harsh facts of life is that old people, precisely because they're vulnerable and often defenseless, are frequently the victims of crime. But this report is the opposite of that familiar theme. This is a story about old people who commit crimes. This is a report on elderly delinquency.
How would you guys like to go on a stick-up with me?
In the recent film Going in Style, Art Carney and Lee Strasberg agreed with George Burns to relieve the boredom of their old age by committing a bank job.
What was that?
But this was make-believe.
I said, how's it?
Your Honor, I went in there to get some garden tools.
Garden tools?
Yeah,
Yes,
they didn't have what I wanted, so I was walking out, and I see this thing. I don't know why I took it. I couldn't use it if I did bring it home.
You mean you didn't even need the part, sir?
No.
You just decided that you'd like to take it?
I just saw it there, and I don't know. I've been sick ever since.
Pleading not guilty means going to court and going to a jury and the whole bit for the $3 and change there.
You've been charged with shoplifting or retail theft, sir. Can you, how do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
Elderly delinquents, senior citizens arrested and brought to justice. These people aren't going in style. Loneliness, anxiety, and the crushing pressures of fixed incomes and runaway inflation have combined to create what must be the nation's most pathetic crime wave.
Yeah. I took about 2 steps outside. Somebody got a hold of my elbow, and I turned around, and there was a woman, and she says, "You took these bags. You didn't pay for them." Oh, my God. I says, "Here, I'll give you the money. Well, my daughter will pay when she pays for her things." She says, "No, you can't do that." Well, each step to her office, I thought I'm dropping dead. It was the worst experience I think I've had in my whole life.
Over the past several decades, there's been a break from the traditional way America cares for its old people. Years ago, the elderly remained part of the family unit, often living with or at least nearby their children and grandchildren. Now, for tens of thousands of senior citizens, that's changed, for a variety of reasons. Now they're flocking to retirement communities spread throughout the Sun Belt of the country. From Southern California to South Florida, retired people are becoming a larger and larger percentage of the population. Many have found the tranquility they were searching for when they left their hometowns, but many others have discovered tarnish on their golden age. After going through 60 or 70 or even 80 years of life as law-abiding citizens, hundreds are being arrested now for crimes like shoplifting. And here in South Florida, they're called elderly delinquents.
Judge, why did they do it?
The most obvious reason is economics. Don't let anyone kid you, it's the money problem, it's inflation. The people are scared, they're anxiety-ridden, and that's the #1 reason. One fellow was caught in a supermarket and blood is running down his head. And the clerk says, "Sir, you're bleeding, there's something wrong." And he said, no, I'll be all right. Finally, they take off his hat and they see he has a piece of sirloin meat on his head. It's embarrassing. The man was 86 years old.
With inflation running at 15 or 18%, little explanation is needed about its terrible toll on the fixed incomes of most senior citizens. But the current wave of elderly delinquency is apparently more complicated than desperate poor people stealing to feed themselves. Loneliness, boredom, even a desire to get back at an economic system that makes the elderly its lowest priority are other reasons often cited by experts attempting to explain this melancholy phenomenon.
Other cases were basically loneliness. They wanted to get apprehended. They wanted to be arrested so that maybe their family would feel sorry for them. To say that maybe we're not giving Grandma the attention that she deserves.
If somebody goes through their entire life as an honest, upright, solid citizen, and they suddenly show behavior which is just completely out of keeping, they resort to means which express some of their irritation and frustration.
This man, for instance, was picked up allegedly trying to walk out of a store with an item worth 49 cents. At the time, he had $30 in his wallet.
May I ask you how old you are?
68 years old.
68?
I'm going to steal that.
Why?
Huh?
You mean you didn't steal it?
Well, I picked up on customs, forgot to put it in the counter. No, 49 cents.
You don't call that stealing, right?
Well, it was just slip on my mind, that's all it was.
Oh, all right.
He was luckier than most. The management decided not to press charges. They just required him to sign a statement promising he would never shop there again. This old gentleman wasn't as lucky. 74 years old, he was arrested and charged for stealing a hardware fitting worth less than $2. For old people, many of whom have never even received a traffic ticket before, coming face to face with the criminal justice system for the first time is obviously a traumatic and shocking experience. Aside from the fact that they have to face the consequences of their actions, they also realize that because this is an open public court, their friends or neighbors might find out about what they've done. And for most of them, it's that embarrassment that's the worst part of the whole experience.
I did it very foolishly. Yeah. I like to expedite this matter, get it over with, pay whatever fine the court decides now.
I understand. And what I feel I'm doing...
Because, you see what it is.
Yeah.
It's not only for me, it's for my family. Right now, they don't know it. And if you drag it on, I don't want to involve my family in this thing.
They took me, fingerprinted me, blacked my hands all up, fingerprinted me, put me in front of the camera, took my picture, and gave me a number, and put a number on me, like a criminal.
Did you feel like a criminal?
Yes, I felt like a criminal when he done that, and he put that thing on there. I felt like a criminal. I didn't say nothing. I said, what do you think, I killed somebody?
This morning in court, that was the worst embarrassment of any of them. Facing the judge and other people hear what they say and what you got in there for. I felt like I was ready to drop because I never had that experience before, not even a speeding ticket or anything, you know.
I can tell that they're thoroughly frightened, and I try to be a little bit understanding as far as that's concerned and let them understand that no one's going to put them in jail forthwith or chop off their heads, so to speak. But there's a definite traumatic experience involved in the whole episode.
Judge, what reasons do the seniors give for the crime of shoplifting, for getting involved in a criminal action when they've lived their whole life, 60, 70 years, without ever being involved?
The vast majority of them don't seem to have any cogent or logical reason whatsoever. They just simply say, I don't know.
It's not an ethnic problem. It's not a color problem. It's not a race problem. It's not a creed problem. They all suffer from ageism. And the people who are watching out there, someday they're going to be old too, and then they're going to be aware of what I'm saying. Naturally, there's loneliness enters into it, depression enters into it, the lack of attention by their children or by their families enter into it.
Despite the many underlying reasons, most old people like these shoppers do not steal. Still, the problem of elderly delinquency has reached near epidemic proportions. 100 a month are being arrested just in this one Florida county, and hundreds more are caught and then released by store security personnel. 17 old folks, for example, were grabbed and then released in just this one department store on a recent Saturday afternoon. The numbers are depressingly enormous, but there does seem to be a solution.
Ma'am, I am going to refer you to our Broward Senior Intervention Education Program.
I have,
I'm going, just a moment, I'm going to let them interview you, ma'am, and if they decide to accept you, and if you feel you want to go along with their program, we may give you an opportunity to avoid being found guilty on this charge. Do you understand?
I'm registered.
Broward County's pretrial intervention program correctly treats this as a social and not a criminal problem.
The pretrial intervention program that we rerun, beginning at the court process, tries to get them out of the court system and remove some of that trauma. Or, if necessary, if we find that the emotional trauma is so great, we'll try to get them out of the arraignment with cooperation of the court and get them into our diversionary program, which will involve socialization at a community center of the senior nature, and also with counseling involved.
As you've seen so far in this report, there is no consensus on exactly what the cause is for this wave of elderly delinquency. We know it's for real, we just don't know why. But whether the real reason is the economy, loneliness, anxiety, or a combination of all of those, there is just one fact that all the experts agree on. Once an elderly delinquent gets involved in one of these diversion programs, they never get in trouble again. Counseling is definitely an important part of the programs, but mostly it's socialization, introducing people to people, helping them to meet new friends who are sympathetic and understanding. Now, just a small percentage of the people at this community center are in that pretrial intervention program. Their reason for being here is kept secret from the other senior citizens to prevent unnecessary embarrassment. Isn't it ironic that a problem as apparently complex as the current wave of elderly delinquency is being successful?
Shanks recently wrote a book titled Old is What You Get. If we remembered that simple, universal lesson that sooner or later we will all be old, perhaps the elderly would suffer less of the discrimination, the loneliness, and the anxiety that leads increasing numbers of them near the end of honorable lives to commit delinquent acts. By the way, it's late. Do you know where your parents are?
I like that thought. Thank you, Geraldo. We'll hear from Geraldo on a follow-up story in just a few minutes. In a moment, Barbara Walters with an exclusive interview of former Vice President Spiro Agnew. Is he planning a political comeback? And then a profile of the Queen of Country Music.
Miss Loretta Lynn, here she is.
Well, I was born a coal miner's daughter in a cabin on a hill in Butcher Hollow. We were poor, but we had love. That's the one thing that Daddy made sure of. He shoveled coal to make a poor man's dollar.
That house is over 100 years old. So I thought I'd paint it with the same thing they put on Thomas Edison's house. But I got Olympic Overcoat instead. It beats Sears Weatherbeater. Tests show that Overcoat actually looked better longer. I think a house like that deserves a paint like this.
Olympic Overcoat, the paint that beats the Weatherbeater. Now on sale. Buy 4 gallons, get 1 free at participating Olympic dealers.
This is the 4.1-liter Buick Electra, America's first and only traditional luxury car with a V6 engine, standard. It's very responsive, yet few cars go further on a tank of gas. Still, some might question the wisdom of putting a V6 engine in a full-size luxury car. Well, when you consider that for every one of these, you part with one of these and then some, the logic is crystal clear.
Take the V6 surprise drive at your Buick dealers now.
If you're looking for a light beer with a full-bodied taste of your regular beer, your search will end with Michelob Light. The rich, full-bodied taste of Michelob Light. Don't just compare it to other light beers. Compare the taste to any beer you like. It's that good. Michelob Light. Compare the taste to any beer you like.
Yeah.
Saturday on ABC's Wide World of Sports at a special earlier time. The top amateur boxers in America square off for championship titles. And live, the countdown continues at the time trials for the Indy 500. Who will make the illustrious field of 33? And from racing cars to racing thoroughbreds, live, the Preakness Stakes. The lady champ of the Derby, Genuine Risk, is out to capture the second jewel of the Triple Crown. Watch horse racing history in the making. Saturday on the leader in sports, ABC.
On October 10th, 1973, Spiro Agnew resigned as Vice President of the United States, only the second person in history to do so. John Calhoun quit as Andrew Jackson's Vice President in 1832 to serve in the Senate. Agnew's resignation may have saved him from serving time in prison. He made a deal with federal prosecutors. About his fall from grace, Agnew has had little to say in public. Tonight, he does talk with Barbara Walters. It's his first television interview about the events leading to his resignation and his life since then. Barbara?
Well, Hugh, in the 6.5 years since he left office, Spiro Agnew has maintained a low profile. He wrote a moderately successful novel and has been building up overseas clients for his consulting business. He's been disbarred from the practice of law. To understand how his life has changed, we have to go back in time, back to 1968.
I stand here with a deep sense of the improbability of this moment.
Spiro, who? Was the question in the minds of most Americans in August of 1968, when Richard Nixon picked him for the #2 slot on the Republican ticket. The question wasn't asked for long.
I'm concerned about crime in this country, and I'm concerned about the permissive attitudes that reflect on the federal government at the present time. I mean that the moral tone in this country is going to be improved.
I, Spiro Theodore Agnew.
5 months later, Spiro Agnew was the 39th Vice President of the United States and a household word.
when the news that 40 million Americans receive each night is determined by a handful of men responsible only to their corporate employers.
He was Richard Nixon's cutting edge, hitting out at the administration's critics.
In the United States today, we have more than our share of the nattering nabobs of negativism.
In August 1972, Spiro Agnew was nominated for, as the Nixon campaign phrase went, 4 more years. Nixon and Agnew trounced George McGovern and Sergeant Shriver at the polls. Victory was sweet, their cares few, but then the bubble burst.
Committee will come to order.
Watergate engulfed the White House, paralyzed the Nixon administration, and at the same time Richard Nixon was fighting for his political life, Spiro Agnew began to hear voices from the past. These 4 men, Lester Matz, Jerome Wolfe, I.H. Hammerman, and Alan Green, former friends and associates of Agnew's from his days as a county executive and governor of Maryland, told federal prosecutors they had paid bribes and kickbacks to Agnew in return for local government contracts. Matz and Green testified that the payments continued while Agnew was vice president. The charges leaked out, and Agnew struck back.
Some Justice Department officials have decided to indict me in the press. I will not resign if indicted. I will not resign if indicted.
But the federal prosecutors in Baltimore eventually built a case of conspiracy, extortion, and bribery, so strong that it would cost Spiro Agnew his reputation and his office. On October 10th, 1973, Agnew appeared in the Baltimore courtroom to plead nolo contendere, no contest, to 1 count of income tax evasion involving illegal payments. That was part of the government's price for dropping the other charges and its demand for a jail sentence. There was also the ultimate price, his resignation.
After hard deliberation and much prayer, I concluded several days ago that the public interest and the interests of those who mean the most to me would best be served by my stepping down.
That was almost the last time we heard anything from Spiro Agnew, until now. In a new book to be released this week, Agnew says that he was framed, that his accusers, who today are all 3, were seduced into perjury by the prosecution with promises of immunity for the crimes they themselves committed. And, he says, Nixon's chief of staff, Alexander Haig, scared him out of office by telling him, in effect, to go quietly or else. Or else what, Mr. Agnew?
Well, that's what I was wondering. He called my administrative aide, my military aide, General Dunn, into his office, and he delivered this ultimatum in which he said, things are going to get nasty and dirty and anything may be in the offing. Well, they're not words to reassure one, given my state of mind at the time.
They are not words to reassure one, but they are also not words that could cause, well, they're necessarily words that could cause the reaction you had. Did you really think that the White House was going to have you rubbed out?
That was a possibility in my mind, yes. I was a person who had been through 7 months of a pressure cooker at this time. And I was quite illogical, apprehensive. And I wasn't thinking as clearly as I might. And I know that you're pointing out that this is written 6.5 years later. But I'm still trying to reflect what I thought then. And I still say it is a possible.
Mr. Agnew, I spoke directly with General Haig, who's now convalescing from open heart surgery. He called your charges ludicrous, and he said, and I quote, instead of writing a book, Spiro Agnew should spend his time thanking God he isn't in jail.
Well, that's an expected reaction from the general.
You say today that you were framed, that 4 men turned against you to save their own skins.
These 4 people walked away, with the exception of one who served a term for a matter totally unrelated to my case, walked away totally scot-free. 2 of them are still practicing their professions. None has a jail record.
One has a jail record.
None of the 3 I'm speaking of has ever been prosecuted.
Attorney General Richardson, whom I also talked to, said to me again, as he has written, that in all his years as a U.S. attorney, as a state's attorney general, and as the attorney general of the United States, he has never seen a case as where he was as absolutely sure of the guilt. And he also said that this was the reason that he had wanted that 40-page exposition of evidence put in, as you know, put into the court record, so that in case you made any allegations in the future, people could go back to that 40 pages and say, look.
Barbara, I want people to go back to that 40 pages. I want them to look at it because it's obvious that there's no corroboration. Everything is what one told the other. Co-conspirators, admittedly, in matters that did not involve me.
Then let me go back to what people ask. It has taken you 6.5 years to write this book.
Mm-hmm.
You say you were innocent. But, Mr. Agnew, there are men who have gone to jail rather than cop a plea. Were you so terrified of going to jail? People expected so much from you. You were a very moral man in your speeches. Why didn't you fight? Were you so afraid of jail?
I didn't know that. Yes, I was afraid of jail.
You would rather have lost the vice presidency. You would rather have been disgraced than go to jail?
I didn't think the odds were good enough from what my lawyers told me.
But what if you'd gone to jail and said, listen,
if I'd gone
innocent.
to jail, I'd probably never found out these things.
This brings up the whole question of politics. But you start off in your book and you say, I was no better and no worse than other officials in the government. Weren't you expected to have been better?
Probably.
Is politics simply a kind of dirty business, business as usual?
Well, raising money is a gray business, as I've said at best. The only way to raise money in the quantities needed, especially before there was any federal funding, is to interest people who think they're going to benefit. And that's the plain facts of political life.
Well, when you give people contracts in return for contributions, isn't that, in a sense, extortion?
No. No, you help your friends in politics where you can, where they're qualified.
One hand, one
and you
to the
help
other.
other people, too. You help people that don't help you.
Politics has been good to you, and politics has been bad to you. After these years, how do you feel about politics?
I wouldn't recommend anyone going to politics today. Any young person.
Why not?
Because it's just people, the expectation of people from people in public office is just so high that no ordinary man can ever perform to suit them.
Can't you expect honesty?
Yes. Honesty is different things to different people.
You readily admit that you took gifts for yourself, $1,000 here, $2,000 there from friends, because you said that you didn't make enough money as governor, $25,000, or even enough as vice president, $65,000. Don't you see anything wrong in that?
It depends on the person and what he's doing with the state, or whether I can help him achieve something through the use of my position or not. If I can't, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Do you have any idea of how much of this personal money you were given?
I would guess somewhere a total in 8 years of, 7 or 8 years of maybe $17,000 or so.
And that, of course, is not illegal if you didn't do direct favors for them. It depends on what one thinks of
That's the
direct
point
favors.
I'm trying to make.
Mr. Agnew, before the investigation, how would you describe your relationship with Richard Nixon?
Well, that's a big order, Barbara. I'd have to say it was distant at best. We never had a close relationship because I was never on the inside of the, what you might call the inner circle in the Nixon administration.
Did Richard Nixon ever make any attempt to get in touch with you after your resignation?
He called me, but not until perhaps a year or more had elapsed, and it was sort of an accidental thing. I happened to be in Palm Springs, and he happened to be in Palm Springs, and I received a call. I was told I had a call from him. I didn't take the call because I thought it was a little late.
Your book is dedicated to Frank Sinatra. Why did you dedicate your book not to your wife or children, but to Frank Sinatra?
I don't feel it's necessary for me to dedicate anything to my wife or children. I've already dedicated my life to them. I dedicate this book to Sinatra because he was the man who reached down and saved me.
How?
I was destitute. I was $200,000 in the hole. Sinatra, through his lawyer, made available $200,000 for me to pay off these assessments so that I could start my life over.
When you...
Without asking anything from them, not even a promissory note.
He gave you money to pay your fine and then gave you money to start your life over.
He gave me money to pay the IRS, money to pay my fine. Yes.
Have you paid him back?
I've paid every cent of it back.
Mr. Agnew, let's talk about your life since your resignation. How do you support yourself today?
Well, I represent some companies in other countries, Germany, Korea, Taiwan. The principal is textiles, the principal area.
Were you ever involved in the sale of arms?
No. Oh, wait, no, wait. You'd have to say, I have to qualify that and say I'm involved in the sale of helicopters for both military and civilian use.
What about machine guns?
No.
Well, I have a letter July 26, 1977, sent to the Minister of the Imperial Court in Tehran. Dear Mr. Minister, and I quote from it, you're talking about the sale of machine guns. You're trying to sell machine guns to the Shah. And you are representing a Belgian company called Fabrique Nationale. So you
I see
were at
no
one point...
inconsistencies in my answer, and you're reading that letter. You asked me whether I was involved in the sale of machine guns.
Yeah.
I said no. I've never sold a machine gun. At one occasion, at the request of that company, I made the solicitation.
To sell machine guns?
It died there. Nothing happened.
But
I've never sold machine guns.
But you tried to sell machine guns.
In 1977, but that wasn't your question, Barbara.
All right, then I have to be more specific. Did you ever try to sell machine guns?
Yes.
Okay.
Once.
Fine. Do you make a lot of money?
Depends on what's a lot of money. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm making a comfortable living.
Do you ever say what might have been?
Yes.
Is there still a great deal of pain?
Some.
Just
yeah, there's still some pain. And I want you to understand as I do this interview, people used to say when I was doing an interview, I was very poised and very cold and clinical. I am churned up beyond belief inside me as I go through these things with you. This is painful. The whole genesis and the writing of this book was painful. The discussion that the book will bring about will be even more painful, I'm sure. But I had to do it. I had to say what my side of this is, because this is the first time I've said it.
What do you wish that history books would say about Spiro Agnew?
I hope they'll withhold judgment, because who knows, California may need a new governor.
In your wildest dreams. I don't want to prejudice my quest. Start off with a prejudice question. Can you ever imagine yourself being back in politics, politically?
Funny things happen.
And you think it might happen?
Funny things can happen.
How funny? What could happen?
In my wildest dreams.
What do you think?
I don't dream of it. I consider that it's a possibility.
Under Ronald Reagan?
I'd like that.
Have you had any discussions with him?
Yes.
Can you tell us about them?
No. If I ever go back into politics, it'll be to run for something, not to be appointed to something.
Run for what?
I don't know.
But would you still like to?
I want to see what happens. Can you think of a better way to rehabilitate your image than to be elected again to something?
Even though you say that you would not recommend that anybody would
No.
go back into politics, you, Spiro Agnew, after all you've been through, say it is a possibility.
My situation is different. I still have something to prove.
So Spiro Agnew wants to run for elective office. Did he tell you in any way what he had in mind?
Well, when the interview was over, I pressed him further, and Agnew then admitted that he was thinking of running for Congress, probably from Palm Springs, California, where he now resides.
Did he discuss this with Ronald Reagan?
No. I called the Reagan people and was told that Agnew did indeed recently telephone, but only to extend his congratulations on how well things were going. Reagan responded, his office said, with, quote, courteous niceties, and that was that.
Yeah. Could he run legally, being disbarred?
Yes, because he hasn't lost his civil rights. The big question is, can people forget?
Or forgive? Look, last week it was Richard Nixon, and this week it's Spiro Agnew. What can we look forward to next Thursday, Barbara?
I think after that coincidence, the best thing for me to do is to take next week off.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara.